Greetings and welcome to our daily walk through Scripture for February the 10th. Today's readings find us wrapping up Exodus chapter 30, reading all of Exodus 31, finishing up Matthew chapter 26, and then reading Psalm 32, 1 through 11, and Proverbs 8, 27 through 32. There's a lot in today's readings. I mean, my goodness. So I had to pick, honestly. I didn't know where to go with it. There was so much to talk about. But we're going to focus on the most important part, and that is the account in Matthew 26. And the reason why we're going to focus on that is very simply this: because the Old Testament points to Jesus. That's the whole point of it. Hopefully by now you figured that out as we look at the parallels, and we talked even yesterday about the Last Supper and the sacrifices that were made in requirements for different offerings. And so when it comes down to talking about the crucifixion, this is what you have to talk about, because it is the central part of Scripture. This is what it's all about. So the good news is some of the things I wanted to talk about in Exodus are going to come back around in Leviticus. So that's good news. But, some theologians, some scholars, I use parentheses very loosely in this, some progressive theologians argue that Jesus never says that he's God. He never comes right out and says it. And they'll argue that he's like, he didn't really say that. He didn't. You guys are just making it up. He was just a good prophet. And they'll say it, but they really are missing. They're missing a lot, frankly, on this. And these passages here in Matthew 26 are very clearly showing that Jesus is God. And we're going to walk through these in a minute. But remember why the book of Matthew was written. And Matthew was written from the perspective, each of the Gospels has a four perspective. Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and John all have a different perspective on who Jesus is and why Jesus was there. And Matthew was written from the perspective of someone who was also Jewish and who was showing that Jesus was the written Jewish Messiah. Okay, so that he fit all of the messianic prophecies of the Old Testament. Now, that obviously created some issues, as we've talked about, with them thinking about a political Jesus versus an actual Messiah. And that's why this passage here is so important, because it deals with that very topic on it. And remember, though, that Matthew was written so that Jesus could be proven as the Jew, the Messiah that was promised to the people of Israel, to the Jews. And matter of fact, in verse 56, Jesus says very clearly, all this, everything that's taken place, in other words, everything that was before this and everything that's about to happen, all takes place so that the writings of the prophet might be fulfilled. So this is talking about prophecies found in minor prophets like Zechariah, in Malachi, some of the major prophets like Daniel and Isaiah. All of these things, plus stuff that came about around the time of David and around the time of Abram, all those different things are being fulfilled. So Jesus is saying everything is about to be fulfilled. And so not only is it about to be fulfilled, but it's about to be exceeded. The expectations and the ideas are about to be succeeded. And so Jesus then comes in before the Sanhedrin after being arrested at the Garden of Gethsemane. And he stands before the high priest, Caiaphas. And he gets asked a series of questions. Okay? And these are where the series of questions are very important. I challenge you, this is the high priest in verse 63. I charge you under oath by the living God, tell us if you are the Messiah, the Son of God. And Jesus said, you have said so. And then he says, from now on you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of the Mighty One. Now, all three of those, and I've talked about this on a Sunday before, all three of these things are important. These three titles, Messiah, the Son of God, and the Son of Man. All three of these titles are important, and these are all three titles that Jesus is owning to. He actually adds the third one into it. Remember, they said, are you the Messiah, the Son of God? And Jesus said, you have said so. Now you say, well, that's not Jesus really saying that's the case, except that Jesus literally just used that on Judas. When Judas, just last chapter, goes, is it me, Lord? And Jesus goes, well, you've said so. In other words, Jesus is saying, yep, yeah. So Jesus acknowledges to being the Messiah. That is the political aspect of it. And then he says, also the Son of God. Now, when we see Son of God, we think of that as being the God part of fully God and fully man. But that's actually not the case. The Son of God in this case, it means more of that God came in physical form. Okay? And then when Jesus says the Son of Man, that's actually a direct reference to the book of Daniel. When I see someone like the Son of Man descending from the clouds, that is God. Okay? When Daniel says Son of Man, he talks about God, and he's talking about Jesus. So here, Jesus admits to being all three of these things: the political Messiah that the Jews were looking for, the human, the in flesh God incarnate that Scripture talks about, and also being God. So all three of these things happen in just those two sentences. So if someone says, Jesus really didn't say it, you can go back to him and go, yeah, actually he did. And not only that, but he made sure that he covered all of the bases. Okay, I told you I had a lot, and I barely even scratched the surface, but we're going to keep moving on. So that's it for today. Have a blessed one. We'll talk next time.